and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 523, and today's date is November 20th, 2014, and the title of this episode is NSA warns China or Russia have the ability to cyber attack the U.S. infrastructure. Now, let's think about this for a second. The NSA is coming out today telling us, oh, look, China or Russia could cyber attack the United States, or it could be another advanced actor that attacks the United States through cyber attacking. They could hit the power infrastructure. They could hit the financial institutions. But let's go back a little bit. Remember Janet Napolitano before she left office? She told us back then that, yes, it's not a matter of if, it is when the United States is going to be cyber attacked. Now, I have done many reports, and each time there is a government official out there letting us know that there's going to be some type of cyber attack. It could be a virtual 9/11. It could be pretty much a cyber Pearl Harbor, and they keep putting names to all of this. And what we're seeing right now is they're really ramping this up. I mean, just recently they've told us that DHS has found a malware inserted in financial institutions, in the power infrastructure, in which could affect the gas pipelines, the water supply, and it looks like it's traced back to Russia, and they can turn this on anytime they want, or an advanced actor could access this malware and turn it on like the Islamic State. Now, they're using all of this right now to convince us that this is going to be done by an outside actor, and as we know, this will be a false flag event to bring down the entire economy, because as we know, this economy is failing. It is not improving. It is collapsing right in front of our eyes. And of course, the United States government, the Fed, they are out there trying to convince us that the economy is recovering. Now, of course, they throw a lot of statistical numbers at us. They keep the stock market really pumped up. They keep gold suppressed, and they have the ability to do all of this. And what we're seeing right now is them build up the propaganda, the story, to cover up this entire collapse of the system. And they want all eyes off of course, the United States government and the Federal Reserve, the central bankers. They want all eyes on either the Islamic State, Russia, or China, or it could be North Korea, depending on who they choose. And it looks like they're going after China and Russia right now as the advanced actors that could actually bring down the power grid and pretty much bring the financial institutions to a screeching halt. We do have to remember that the stock market, the NASDAQ, the BATS system, they all have kill switches. They all have kill switches now to stop the markets from coming down. Now, of course, these were put into place for some type of an event that could occur where the markets would drop drastically. And of course, this is all being done to stop the markets, to stop them in their tracks of coming down and imploding on themselves. So this way, the Fed could step right back in and say, listen, we've been cyber attacked. The economy is in shambles. Everything is a mess. They've stolen millions and billions of dollars from the financial institutions. We have to pretty much close the banks down right now. It will be a bank holiday. We'll have to implement capital controls. You cannot take your money until we assess what actually happened. And of course, you know what's going to happen. You're going to be Cyprus, where pretty much they take your money using the bail-in documents and give you worthless bank stock because all these banks are insolvent. And of course, what we're going to see is different physical attacks across the country. And we're also going to see the lights go out in many different regions to show that, yes, they are attacking us. It is coming from Russia, China. Some of the physical attacks are coming from the Islamic State. And we can see right now they are definitely preparing for this scenario. And this is why the warnings are continually coming, and they're coming out more and more as we go along. Let's get into the economic collapse news. And what are we seeing today? Well, Europe is completely falling apart. European consumer confidence tumbles to 9 months low. It's at a negative 11.66. This is the biggest miss since August of 2011. What else are we seeing? Well, it looks like a survey indicates that the economic growth in the Eurozone has reached its pretty much down point right now, and it is down quite a bit. Market economics on Thursday, the Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, for the 18-nation bloc dropped to 51.4 in November from 54.1 in October. The Eurozone is falling apart. Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, is a pointer of the prosperity of an economy's manufacturing sector and addresses such indicators as production, deliveries, and employment environment. The November slump shattered hopes after the October data had shown signs of improvement in the region. Now, of course, they told us this back in August of 2013 when they were ready to go into Syria and invade Syria. They told us that they're in a recovery, everything is fine, and then after that recovery, everything fell apart. During the beginning of this year, they told us that, yes, everything looks great. We're going to see great growth. Unemployment's going to shrink. And it looks like all of this is not going their way. A fall in the Eurozone PMI to a 16-month low raises the risk of the region slipping back into a renewed downturn. Well, I'm going to say one thing. It's not renewed. It has been there all along. Most of the countries there are in a depression. A lot of them are teetering on a deep recession, and some are entering into a recession. And what we're seeing right now, the world economy is definitely slowing. The manufacturers around the world have confirmed that the economic activity is slowing down everywhere. France's manufacturing PMI dropped to 47.6 in November, down from 48.5. Germany's manufacturing PMI dropped to 50 in November, down from 51.4. Japan's PMI fell more than expected to 52.1 in November, down from 52.4 in October. So we see right now that things are definitely falling apart. In the UK, for the first time since it began collecting data in 1994, Kantar World Panel, the market researcher, reported a decline in UK grocery sales by value. UK grocers were losing market share hand over fist. Goldman reports claiming 20% British grocers are surplus to requirements. Britain's supermarkets have suffered their first fall in sales in at least 20 years as lower food prices and a vicious price war cut the amount that customers spend on groceries. And we can see right now that this has taken effect everywhere. Here in the United States, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing initial claims. They have an uptick. They're about 291,000. They expected about 284,000. This is the fourth miss of last 5 weeks for initial claims. And we have to remember that when these retail stores close, most of these people, I would say a majority of them, are part-time workers. They are not counted. They have to meet, and each state has their own guidelines. Each one has to meet a certain number of hours and a certain number of a pay to apply for unemployment insurance. And if you don't, you're just completely out of luck and you're out of work. So we can see right now that these numbers really aren't true because, as we know, there are a lot of retail stores closing. For one, Staples, they are closing a lot of stores. This year alone, about 170 stores. In total, about 250 or so. But what's very interesting about all these retail outlets, basically what's happening is they're losing sales. Their customer base is drying up. It's shrinking. And this is why they're closing their stores. And as they're closing their stores, they're saying, hey, our sales are going down, but our profits are rising. Well, of course, when you get rid of all those people who are working, you get rid of that real estate and you close the stores down, you have more money to play with. But this doesn't mean that the stores are doing well. Actually, it means the opposite. It means that the customer base is disappearing. And they're shrinking. Caterpillar did this. They said, oh my God, the sales across the world, it's drying up. So let's close factories and, lay off 40,000 people. Look, our profits are up. Well, yeah, but your sales are drying up. And how long can you do this? As you keep closing stores, more and more of this dries up. The more and more you lose, the more stores you close, the more people you lay off. And we've seen this happen to many stores. Crazy Eddie, if anybody can think back that far. We've seen this with Circuit City. We've seen this with many stores, and it's happening all over the place. Look at JCPenney, look at Radio Shack, look at Sears. all of these stores are having the same problem. Now, they can pretend they have these incredible profits, but we know better. We know exactly what's going on. The people of America, they are tapped out. They're not spending like they used to. They don't have those funds coming in, so they are definitely saving their money. And it doesn't matter that the gas prices are coming down. Most of the people realize that gas prices fluctuate up and down, and they know eventually, right after the holiday season, that these gas prices are going to shoot right back up, and they know this is being done on purpose, and basically most of the people are pocketing and saving their money. Listen, last Christmas I realized that I walked around town in my neighborhood and I noticed the garbage was not what it was in the past years. It really kind of dried up. I mean, people had a couple boxes. I mean, I remember when it was piled up high and people were buying tons and tons of presents for the holiday, but I'm not seeing that anymore. Now, here in the States with U.S. manufacturing, guess what? Pretty much the PMI printed a 10-month low of 54.7, missing expectations of about 56.3, following the same suit as Europe. So basically, everything is starting to fall apart, and it's pretty much catching up on all these illusionary statistical numbers that the government and the Fed puts out there. Now, we also have to understand that the auto industry and soon to be the real estate industry, they're going to give loans, well, the auto industry has been doing this, to subprime borrowers. And what we're seeing right now is that a lot of these people cannot make the payments. The amount of U.S. borrowers that were at least 2 months behind on their car loan payments jumped sharply in the third quarter, according to a report on Wednesday from Experian Automotive. The 60-day delinquency rate for U.S. auto loans rose 9%, and it's going up each time. It's going up where people cannot make the payments. Experian's Senior Director of Automotive Credit said in a statement the rise in delinquencies was expected given that the loans to subprime borrowers have taken up a growing proportion of the auto finance market in recent quarters. They're admitting it. We're giving loans to subprime borrowers, and this is why we're seeing delinquencies. Nearly 2 out of every 5 auto loans that were outstanding as of the third quarter went to subprime borrowers. These people come in, and if you have a heartbeat, they will give you a loan. But what happens later on, we see delinquencies continually rise. Now, they're going to do this with real estate. They're going to try to pretty much give everyone a chance to come in, buy real estate, as long as you have a heartbeat, and if you have 3% credit, if you're buying a new house, a lot of the home construction companies will make up the difference and give you 0% down at this point. And we are seeing this right now to push the auto industry up, to push the real estate industry up, and they're doing everything they possibly can. And we have to realize that these real estate purchases are being done in cash. If we look back every single week that I report, mortgage applications are continually declining. They are not going up. And when we look at this and we see what's going on, we understand that investment companies, hedge funds, foreign investors, they are all pushing in cash purchases. They're not taking out mortgages. Then they're trying to rent it. And what's very interesting is that pretty much 1 out of every 3 homes right now is unaffordable to Americans. But what's even more interesting is that Chinese inquiries about real estate investment in the United States surged 35% this week after the two countries, the United States and China, agreed to extend the terms of short-term visas. China's top international property portal said on Friday. The White House announced this week that both countries have extended their term of multiple entry short-term tourists and business visas to 10 years from 1 year. Student visas were extended to 5 years from 1 year, and they're trying to bring in as many investors as they possibly can to push the real estate market back up. They're doing everything they possibly can to get this market up there and continually to stay up there. And as we know, the American people are not purchasing these homes. It is foreign investors hedge funds, investment companies, and they're trying to keep this market alive, but I don't think it's going to work. I think eventually what's going to happen is things are really going to start to fall apart very, very quickly. We realize that there are no loans being made in the banks. They have laid off thousands upon thousands of mortgage people in their departments, and we can see most of these investors are trying to rent out these homes, and they're having a huge problem. The market's coming down, prices are coming down, and they're getting a little bit nervous, and they're saying, should we hold on to these homes or should we start selling them? Because we're buying them at the high right now, and it doesn't look good. And again, I looked around the country, and I am seeing homes coming down in price, like 50,000, 100,000. They're reducing it once, twice, 3 times. Now, again, each area is different, and I'm looking at different areas like in New York, in the South, in California, and each area will be different, but eventually what will happen, just like in 2007, 2008, it will catch up and everyone will feel the pain. Now, there is a question out there. If the economy is recovering, why is there a surge in homeless children? The National Center on Family Homelessness produced a study which showed that almost 2.5 million children in the U.S. were homeless at some point during 2013. That's one child in every 30. Millions of children are not suffering because their parents have suddenly become addicted to drugs. They're lazy. They're stupid. No, what's happening? The parents, many of whom are working as hard as they possibly can, they simply are not able to afford a roof over their head. And we see this all over the country. We see a lot of people living in tents. Of course, this is all kept secret. Nobody really wants to point this out. And we see a lot of people struggling today, just trying to make ends meet. They had a full-time job. They got laid off. Something happened. They've been putting their resumes out there. They find maybe the same type of job, but the pay is much lower, or they can't find work and they're taking part-time work right now. And it is very, very hard to maintain that level once this happens. And it's affecting a lot of people out there. But don't worry. The government realizes this, and they decided they should tax everyone. And it looks like there's a bill which is going to be introduced into in the Senate, which is the wrong place where it's supposed to be introduced, because under Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. But we saw this with Obamacare, where it originated in the Senate, and this is how you know they're trying to do something which is not really pretty much accepted by the American people, and it's something that the corporations, the central bankers want. It's what the people in government want. It's not what the people want. And it looks like this new bill is going to be a carbon fee bill introduced in the Senate because of global warming. And I know all these people are going to come out and say, oh, well, it's real and we have to do something. Well, it looks like they're going to implement a tax on the people. And we know this whole global warming is completely fake. Now, why would you start believing the government at this point? Think about it. This is the American Opportunity Carbon Fee Act, and every time they introduce a bill, it is never what it is. Basically, it's just a tax to tax every single person to bring in revenue to the government. This is what Obamacare was for. Think about it. They lied about 9/11. They lied about the Boston bombing. They lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They lied about the Syrian chemical weapons. They lied about that the Russians were invading Ukraine, that Russia downed the MH17 planes. Why would you believe them now about global warming? They lied about Obamacare, what it was for. Basically, all these things they're introducing right now are taxes, taxing the people because, again, they need to go out and they need to find more and more revenue. This is why they introduced FATCA to go around the world and find those people to bring in more revenue. They tried Obamacare. It completely failed. And now they're trying to do this. And they're saying that this new tax will bring in between $1.5 trillion and $2 trillion in the first decade. And of course, as you know, they're continually adding on more and more debt, and they're getting into trouble, and they need to bring this revenue in. And they're trying to cover all of this up with this event that is going to occur. And this is why we're seeing all the propaganda about Russia being demonized, China being demonized. The Islamic State is a dangerous terrorist group out there because they're getting ready to push this event forward. And of course, they have to tax the people because where are they going to get the revenue? Now, all of you who've been listening to me know how I feel about Obamacare, and it seems that there were some enrollment number rigging going on with Obamacare. A new report shows that the Obama administration mixed dental plan enrollments with the health plan enrollments. Why? Because they wanted to bring their numbers over 7 million. Of course, they were lower than that. Actually, I believe they were much lower than that, but they took the dental enrollments, pushed them into the health plan, and made it look like they had more enrollees than they actually did. And we were starting to realize, and I've been saying this for a very long time, that Obamacare was nothing more than a tax on the people, because if it is a benefit for the people, you do not have to tax them. If it is a benefit for the people, every single government official would accept it. They wouldn't exempt themselves from it. If it was a benefit for the people, they wouldn't have the insurance company write the legislation. If it was a benefit for the people, the premiums would not continually go up higher and higher, and we would not have these high deductibles where you get absolutely no benefit from the health insurance. Now, from all of this, what we're seeing is Obama is getting ready to pretty much sign his executive order for immigration. He's doing this in Las Vegas, and it seems like there's a lot of protesters out there who are protesting against this. And we have to remember, the polls are showing that they don't agree with the president at this time. And it seems like the three major networks will not air President Obama's primetime address. It looks like ABC, CBS, Fox confirmed that Obama's 8 p.m. speech from the White House will not be carried on their networks. CNN reported that NBC would not be carrying their address either. Now, in the past, Obama was out there, and this is when he was trying to get elected, and during this whole time frame, he said that immigration law could not be done without Congress. And here's some instances where President Obama claimed he could not create his own immigration law. On March 31st, 2008, during a presidential campaign speech, I take, and I quote, "I take the Constitution very seriously. The biggest problem that we're facing right now have to do with the president trying to bring more and more power into the executive branch and not go through Congress at all." May 19th, 2008, during a presidential campaign speech, I quote, "We've got a government designed by the founders so that there'd be checks and balances." On April 19th, 2011, during a commencement address at Miami-Dade College, quote, "I know some here wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself, but that's not how democracy works." February 14th, 2013, during an interview at a Google Hangout session, quote, "This is something I've struggled with throughout my presidency. The problem is that I'm the president of the United States. I'm not the emperor of the United States. My job is to execute the laws that are passed." September 17th, 2013, during an interview with Telemundo, "My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed." So we can see right here that he pretty much has let us know that he is the emperor, he is the dictator, and he's definitely going to do it without Congress, even though all these times, and there's many, many more times in this, he's told us that he can't do it. So he realizes that Congress is not going to go along with him, so he has a pen and a paper, and he's going to do whatever he wants. In my other reports, I've talked about the White House and how they're pretty much securing it. We understand we had these people who jumped the fence, ran across, got right up to the door, and where the Secret Service was nowhere to be found. Of course, as we know, there's like 22 different sensors and Secret Service all around the White House. And we know this was completely planned, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to lock down all government buildings right now, and they're trying to put up buffer zones. And we see that a man was arrested Wednesday with a hunting rifle and ammunition in his car outside the White House. 41-year-old R.J. Kapheim was arrested by Secret Service agents after the officers found a rifle and ammunition in his car in the vicinity of the White House. Kapheim from Davenport, Iowa, was arrested after he approached uniformed officers along 15th Street just before 1 p.m. and explained that someone in Iowa told him to drive to the White House. He later showed them to his car, parked nearby and let officers search the vehicle, and that's where they found the ammunition, the knife, and everything else. And it seems like this was completely set up. And what's very interesting is that there's a congressman that was out there saying maybe the president should put a moat around the White House about 6 feet wide, and this would be very effective for keeping the people away. And we can see right now, this is all being ginned up and planned to pretty much keep the people away from the government buildings, and they're continually showing that this is becoming more and more dangerous. And they realize that when this collapse comes, they have to secure these buildings from the rioters, and this is exactly what they're doing right now. Now, what's very interesting, and we have to understand, is that this Ferguson rioting that is being pretty much planned by the FBI, DHS, and other government agencies to pretty much spread across the country is being done right at the same time the president is signing the executive order for amnesty for the illegals. Now, he's signing this on Thursday, and this Ferguson rioting plan that they have might go live on Friday. Who knows? We could have the indictment come down, and all of a sudden we might see rioting, because as we know, the government likes to do things on a Friday and have it go through the weekend, so most of the people are not around looking at what's really going on until it's too late. And this is exactly what they're trying to do. When they closed down the banks in Cyprus, they did this on a Friday. So this seems like a perfect time for them to do this, and it also seems like it would take all eyes off of what President Obama is doing and all eyes on this new problem here in the United States. Now, Ferguson, however, is not the only city set to hold protests immediately following the Darren Wilson grand jury announcement. Actually, they aren't even being referred to as protests anymore. They are now being called planned responses. Gee, this seems like a complete setup. Ferguson National Response Network has posted a very organized list with graphics for each location, which must have taken a lot of time and effort to detail all these things. It's a planned response that have been scheduled for a total of 82 cities across the U.S. and one in Canada after the grand jury announces their decision. Organizers are also holding something called direct action trainings. The organizers have also released a list of 19 proposed rules of engagement. Now, we need to look at this very carefully, and if anyone is in these areas, do not get involved with this whatsoever. They're trying to suck people in to get this whole thing going. And we have to look closely at the people that are trying to gin this up. We have to look at their shoes, the objects that they're using. Is it part of the landscape, or did they bring them in from the outside? Are they hooded where you can't see who they really are? These are the people that are trying to provoke this. Now, once this starts, if it does, hopefully it does not, and people are, looking at this saying, okay, what is this guy out here throwing this garbage can or throwing this, metal structure? It makes no sense. The news will continually show that one person over and over and over to show that if things are getting out of hand, and they'll try to gin this up all throughout the United States. And this is the thing that we have to watch, and this is a good indicator to see what is about to happen. Now, as we know, in Ukraine, the Dutch are still investigating the MH17 crash, and we understand there's many different nations that have like a secret pact, and the Dutch government has refused to reveal details of a secret pact between members of the joint investigation team examining the downflight MH17. Of course, all these countries that got together, Netherlands, Belgium, Australia, Ukraine, United States, they're keeping it a secret. If anyone wants to release information and another country vetoes it, it stays a secret. Now, they've done this on purpose because they're very nervous. They don't want the real information coming out because it might harm their country. Now, we know what this is really about. This is about hiding the real evidence because we know exactly what's taken place in this area. Now, in Ukraine, we know the OSCE is out there, and this is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. They are patrolling the area, looking at everything, inspecting everything, making sure everyone is abiding by the agreements, and it seems like they're coming under fire in the southeastern region by snipers. They don't know who, but we can kind of figure out that this might be coming from the Kiev side. We saw it during the coup d'etat where snipers were out there They were behind the protesters. They were from the whole entire organization that was creating the coup. You know, the United States, the EU, most likely was some type of organization was out there, and we can see they're doing the same thing once again. Now, yesterday I reported that there was a government official out there saying that they should supply Ukraine with lethal weapons, and Russia said the United States would violate international agreements and destabilize the situation if it supplies weapons to Ukraine government forces fighting the separatists, and this would not be good. And of course they're referring to that government official who said maybe we should give them lethal weapons. But right now the United States is giving them non-lethal military assistance. Basically, they're having Humvee vehicles. They're being brought into Ukraine right now with other supplies, and we know for a fact, covertly, through back channels, they're bringing in military assets, just like they did with the Syrian opposition, where the government said, no, we are not arming these people, and it turned out, yes, they were, through different back channels. The same thing's happening in Ukraine. There is absolutely no difference whatsoever. Now, Vice President Joe Biden, he's going to be visiting Kiev. And basically he's saying the United States will stand with you and support you in this effort, and we are working to provide additional support for your economy, for the implementation of reforms, and also for the security, he added. Now attack! Now, basically what's happening here is what we saw before. We saw John Kerry arrive in Kiev, we saw Joe Biden arrive in Kiev, and right after they arrived, the anti-terrorism forces were created. Joe Biden is there to give them the okay. It is time to go ahead and attack the southeastern people. And we're seeing right now this is exactly what's going to happen. And of course, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden said sanctions against Russia should be toughened if Moscow continued on its current course in Ukraine. And again, they're continually using the propaganda that Russia is inside, and we know through the Open Skies Treaty, United States is flying over Russia, flying over Ukraine, taking a look at everything that's there, taking pictures, and they can fly over all the different areas, and they have 96 hours to do this, and they're going to report that there is absolutely nothing there. Now, what's very interesting is that Russia is out there, and they're saying, listen, we don't care what format we use for peace. We are ready for peace. We could use the Minsk format, the Geneva format, the Weimar format, the Normandy format, but Ukraine, Kiev, Yatsenyuk, they're saying, no, we don't want to discuss peace whatsoever. Now, it looks like the Ukrainian officials, they have reached out to Israel military for discussions on military training as it faces an unremitting challenge from the southeastern rebels. Now, we see this here in the United States, where at a lot of the police forces, we see the military going over to Israel, trying to have Israel help with their training on how to come down on people very, very hard. And we can see this really showing up here in the United States. And now Ukraine is out there, and the officials said Kiev has invited Israel to provide training for Ukraine's military and security forces. They said Israel could provide expertise in the field of counterinsurgency and special forces. And we know what this means. This means they're going to go after those people in the southeastern section very, very hard. Now, of course, Kiev is out there saying, listen, we are abiding by the UN Charter. Kiev claims that a military operation it is conducting in eastern Ukraine is well in line with the United Nations Charter and meets the country's liabilities under international law. Now, of course, how do they meet all this? What have they done? Well, the Ukrainian government has been conducting anti-terrorist operations in the country in eastern regions. This is how they get away with it. Again, this is what the United States government central bankers normally do. Once they take over a country and they set up a puppet regime, all those people who do not go along with them, they are now called terrorists, and they set up anti-terrorism forces, just like they did in Ukraine, just like they did in Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq. All those people who did not want the puppet government in there, who do not want the United States central bankers in there, they call them Al-Qaeda. They are the terrorists, and we have an anti-terrorism force which uses drones to push them back. The same thing's happening in Ukraine, and again, this is all part of the playbook. This is exactly what they do. Non-stop. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand things are completely falling apart. Things are getting a lot worse out there. We understand that Yemen, Libya, and Lebanon, pretty much Libya and Yemen, pretty much the people have really taken over the countries. Lebanon is still in battling. And we understand that the United States government central bankers are trying to get back into these countries. And right now, the State Department spokesman said on Wednesday, we are closely monitoring the situation and are concerned by the destabilizing threat that the militias and terrorist groups pose to the Libyan people and government. And they're making their case saying the people are in trouble. They're under threat from these terrorist organizations. We have to go back in there and save them. And this is exactly what they do every single time. Now, out in Syria, it looks like Putin is going to relaunch the peace talks. And we discussed this before. A high-level Syrian delegation will meet Russian President Putin in Moscow Wednesday to discuss possibly relaunching peace talks to end the country's civil war. Now, he did this back in August of 2013, September of 2013, where he came out and said, listen, if Assad gets rid of his chemical weapons, is the United States satisfied with this? And they said, absolutely, this is all we want. And of course, we knew this is not what they wanted. They wanted Assad out. And again, this is what's happening. Now, the Islamic State terror organization is hunting for foreign consultants willing to travel to Iraq and Syria to teach the jihadists how to use and maintain their weapons. The group has sent word to black market arms traffickers that is willing to pay for outside advisors, according to a U.S. military officer familiar with the Islamic State. Now, they know all this information. They just can't bomb them. They just keep missing them. And it's just amazing the propaganda that's coming out from the United States government trying to convince us that all of this is being done and the Islamic State is looking for outside consultants. They're in Iraq, they're in Syria, they're battling the coalition forces, Germany, Australia, France, the United States, bombing like crazy, and they have time to look for outside consultants because, again, we have to remember they're not involved in this. They're not helping Islamic State go into and out of Turkey, so they're just stuck in Syria and Iraq, and they're being bombed. They're bombed in Syria, they're bombed in Iraq. They're very busy, but they can go on social media, they can make videos, they can do all of these things during this, and the United States government central bankers know everything that they do, except where they are. It's completely unbelievable. Now, it seems like there's a little bit of propaganda out there, and it seems like they're trying to make that the Islamic State is getting their weapons from Russia. And this is coming from Iraq, where they're saying that some countries are delivering weapons to the Islamic State by using airplanes in Tel Afar airport. Russian aircraft filled with arms and ammunition landed in Baghdad, and then they were rerouted, and they landed in Tel Afar. And this is where the Islamic State is getting their weapons. And the Iraqi people in this area are saying that the U.S. should come in and blow up the airport. Now, of course, what they're really trying to say and what they're trying to link this to is that the Islamic State is part of Russia. The Islamic State, since it's part of Russia, Russia deals with Assad. Assad then deals with the Islamic State, and they're trying to put all of this together and demonize Russia, and we can see they're doing everything they possibly can. But again, this story makes no sense whatsoever. Why would Russia go in there and supply the Islamic State with weapons? Russia was friendly with Maliki. Russia wanted Maliki in power. They were making deals together. They're friends with Syria. What would be the motivation to have the Islamic State and supply them with weapons to infiltrate Syria? It wouldn't. This is all propaganda. Now, there's a report out there that says that in the UK, about 500 UK webcams, thousands worldwide, are being accessed by Russia. And they traced this back to Russia, but it was from a server that was in Australia that bounced off another server. And again, they're saying about 500 webcam feeds in the UK, as well as about 4,500 in the US, 2,000 in France, 1,500 in the Netherlands. And it seems like this is propaganda to make it seem like Russia is peeking in on everyone and looking at what you do. And of course, they really would have a very hard time tracking this down. And of course, they're trying to blame Russia for all of this. Now, again, the NSA is out there, and they are giving us a warning that China or one or two other nations, most likely Russia, have the capability of crippling the American power grid through cyber attacks. Michael Rogers, the top official at both NSA and United States Cyber Command, said that the major systems like the infrastructure that provides power to houses and facilities across the country could be taken offline by state-sponsored hackers from abroad. All of that leads me to believe it is only a matter of when, not if, we are going to see something dramatic happen. And this is coming from Mike Rogers. The same thing that Janet Napolitano said. China's economic cyber espionage has grown exponentially in terms of volume and damage done to our nation's economic future. The Chinese intelligence services that conduct these attacks have little to fear because we have no practical deterrence to that theft. This problem is not going to go away until that changes. If we wait another year, we are risking the economy of the United States. And if you notice, they slipped the economy of the United States into there. This is in preparation for a major cyber attack on the financial institutions, on the power grid, on pretty much everything. And they need to blame another country, another group. And we can see they're using this propaganda. They will not let up because this is coming very soon. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.